Jarvis, I want to follow up on our incident from this summer, the infamous incident on the Yukon, out in the Yukon Charlie area with Mr. Jim Wild, and that very unfortunate incident that, as I reminded you when we were meeting in my office, for all the work that the Park Service does in our state, it sometimes takes just one incident, and in this case, one that turned out to be very high profile, very public, and very unfortunate, not only for Mr. Wild, but I think for the image of the Park Service. And we had talked about how we move forward. That matter is, I still understand, before the courts coming up, and I recognize that we're limited in our ability to talk specifically about that because that is a case that will be taken up in the courts. But what you and I had discussed was whether or not the effort is underway to improve the relationship or the perspective of Alaskans towards the National Park Service, particularly out in this region. We had talked about perhaps some additional ANILCA training for Park Service law enforcement officers that are operating in that area, perhaps some level of sensitivity training. Can you give me any update in terms of what we might expect for this upcoming season?
Oh, thank you, Senator. I have followed up in quite a bit of detail on that incident and the needs for rebuilding relationships with the people of Alaska. In March, the staff participated in a potlatch and community meeting in Eagle, actually in Eagle Village, and as a follow-up, we have hired a liaison into the organization from the community to really assist parks in understanding how to build and maintain relationships.
Is this a liaison out in Eagle then? Or?
No, they're on our Anchorage staff. Okay. But there is someone specifically in Eagle that has volunteered to work directly with the park, and I don't remember his name right now, but he's a local guy that has made specific, in his words, he said, I don't object to what you're doing, I object to how you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And I can help you. And in discussions I've had with the regional director, Sue Massica, up there about that, they are going to take advantage of that opportunity to engage directly with training with the employees and to ensure that these kinds of incidents really
do you know if Sue Massica has been up to either the Eagle or the Circle area to visit with the local folks up there? I
do not think she's been up there yet, but I know she is planning it. There is a meeting planned for April the 8th and in Eagle, and then some similar ones in other places like Tok and Circle and other parts in sort of that northern tier. So I do have a commitment from Sue to get up there. She was scheduled to go up there, and I think they were weathered out recently, and so
I think it would be critically important, again, in this relationship that we have that right now is very, very tenuous.
Yes.
And I think the message from the Park Service needs to be one that is a genuine outreach and not just based on one incident, but a continuing outreach and a continuing collaboration. I would certainly encourage that, and I know it's going to be uncomfortable for a while, but the only way to get past this is to really be working at it, and right now the local people do not feel that the Park Service is engaging with them in a manner that is anything close to being described as neighborly. So we need to get around this. Let me ask about the source of this issue with Mr. Wild, and this was when his boat was attempted to be boarded in the middle of the Yukon River. The stated purpose of approaching boats in the Yukon is to conduct the boater safety checks, also the checking for the state of Alaska boat registrations. The questions that I have for you are twofold. The checking for the state of Alaska registration is one that typically the state of Alaska would do. Did the state give you the authority to enforce the voter registration requirements, and then similarly, the Coast Guard as well, because under the Park Service jurisdiction, you've got, as I understand it, you adopt all the applicable laws and regs of the Coast Guard. But does the Park Service have either that authority that is conferred to them either by the Coast Guard or by the state when it comes to checking for voting registration?
The legal interpretation that we have, and this, of course, is being challenged in this particular case, and was the assertion in the first round of the case that the Park Service did not have jurisdiction. The legal foundation is our ability to assimilate other laws and enforce them in areas within boundaries of the national parks. And in Yukon Charlie, in this case, the Yukon River is within the boundaries, and our attorneys believe strongly that the National Park Service has the authority to enforce these both federal Coast Guard regulations and state regulations on those waters without having a granting of that from those other agencies. Those are assimilated regulations that are promulgated already as National Park Service regulations. So we're basically enforcing our own regulations, but they are assimilated from both state and, in this case, the Coast Guard.
And I guess the question would be, most people, when you think about the National Park Service and the mission that you have, it's not to be the Coast Guard, it's not to be the state of Alaska, it is to operate, to build, maintain our parks. It has nothing to do with boating safety or boating licensing registrations. The concern that we're facing in Alaska right now is the actions by the Park Service are being viewed as an overreach of your agency into the authority of others. The methods that were used, the tactics that were used on this one individual, those were unfortunate in and of themselves, but I think it speaks to a broader concern, and that is viewed as the overreach. Again, I understand that much of this will be the subject of the legal proceedings that are underway, but I think it is important to have some kind of an understanding that the confines within which the Park Service operates will be respected, and that you will not be the law enforcement for all that goes on within the Yukon Charlie region. And I think that's what you are facing right now. And again, I don't think that puts you in good stead with the Alaskans in the region there.
And we're having discussions around that, about, at least in sense of priority, in terms of what the park law enforcement staff are focused on.
Mr. Chairman, I have some other questions, but I'll submit them for the record. I appreciate the time, and thank you, Mr. Jarvis.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. Let me recognize Senator Coons.
Thank you, Senator Udall, and thank you,